And has France committed itself to a long and difficult campaign in Africa? That's the question on this day 5 of a military intervention in Mali. French jets are pounding positions in the north as they try to prevent jihadists from advancing on Bamako. And more help is on the way. Soldiers from across West Africa are due to arrive within days, while France itself is to triple the number of its own troops. But according to French President François Hollande, France is not planning on a long stay in Mali.
La France n'a pas vocation à rester au Mali.
It's not France's place to stay in Mali. We do, however, have the goal of making sure that when we leave, when the intervention ends, Mali is safe and has a stable government, with an electoral process in place.
Il y ait une sécurité au Mali.
And that there are no more terrorists threatening the country's territorial integrity.
Et qu'il n'y ait plus de terroristes qui menacent l'intégrité du Mali.
François Hollande speaking earlier. So is France alone when it comes to support from the West? NATO, the UK, Germany and the United States all have expressed their moral support for the French mission, but they've also made it crystal clear that they won't be getting involved. Here's the US Defence Chief Leon Panetta speaking a little earlier.
There is no consideration of putting any American boots on the ground at this time. We have commended the French for this effort to try to go into Mali to stop the AQIM, these terrorists and members of Al-Qaeda from being able to develop a base of operations in Mali.
So is it a case of out of Afghanistan and into Mali for French forces? We're here to discuss tonight in the studio. Patrick Smith is the editor-in-chief at the Africa Report. I'm also joined by Douglas Yates. He's a professor of political science at the American University in Paris. Donae Gledu is a senior editor here at France 24. And in Zurich tonight, Dr. Alexandre Vautravers is a military expert. He's also the head of international relations at Webster University. Good evening to you all and thanks for being with us. Now, let's first of all hear from our correspondent, Philomène Remy, for the latest on what's going on inside Mali. She joins us now from the capital, Bamako. Philomène, the situation is developing very rapidly, as we've been reporting throughout the day. What is the feeling among residents in the capital tonight?
Yeah, there's one word to resume the situation in Bamako today, is happiness. Everyone is happy. People in the street are acclaiming French President François Hollande. A lot of them are waving flags in the street, on their cars, on their motorbikes. This afternoon, I just met 2 women on their motorbikes, and they told me that they felt safe and happy. Another woman who has family in Tombouctou told me that people were smoking outside to celebrate, which is a very strong symbol. Some of them were also dancing, but they know that it's just the start of the mission, because today Islamist fighters are just 400 kilometers from Bamako in the town of Jabali.
It is just the beginning, but more help is due to arrive, isn't it? We've got hundreds of French and African troops soon making their way to Mali. Is there a feeling that this is a war that can be won?
Yes, basically 900 people, the first 900 Nigerian troops will be in Mali in the next 24 hours. So it's 300 more than previously announced. What I can say that according to experts in Bamako, one thing is sure, French troops will remain in the lead of the operation because African troops don't have like the same equipment. And what they're saying as well is that a lot of Islamist fighters are hiding currently. But when they're going to be back on the ground, African troops are going to be there.
And as I say, Philomène, this is moving very, very quickly. What is the latest on the movement of the French troops already inside Mali?
Yeah, I was just informed like 10 minutes ago that a new French convoy left the Bamako airport. They're heading to the east of Mali. We don't know yet what's the purpose of the mission. And earlier, I spoke to one of the French captains who is staying at the Bamako airport. He told me that there were 800 French troops in Bamako. Obviously now the number has increased with the new convoy. but he is also telling me that he confirmed to me that the number of French troops will soon reach 2,500 people. They don't know yet how long they're going to stay because it's impossible to say.
Philomène Remy in Bamako, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date with the situation there. So we just heard Patrick Smith. People in Bamako are pretty euphoric about this. They see it as though the French have come to their rescue. But this is no easy mission, is it? I mean, this could take a lot longer than the French are saying it will.
I think it will take a lot longer. There's no question about that. The first bit of the mission to stop the southward movement of the Islamist forces, fair enough. They've done that through aerial bombardment. But what is very quickly becoming apparent is that they need to engage these fighters on the ground because they're going to hide in the areas where there are other civilians. It can't be done from the air. There needs to be a ground force. The Malian army is still in disarray. The other forces that are coming in, the Nigerian forces, which will constitute the bulk of the African contingent, are not experienced in desert warfare or the sort of conditions they're going to encounter in northern Mali. And they don't have the sort of equipment they need to pull off this offensive, and that's not going to be available immediately. So I think there's going to be a very tough interim period after this initial aerial bombardment before a ground offensive or ground counter-offensive can get underway.
Dr. Vautravert in Zurich, you're the military expert here. Can this war be won from the air with those African troops on the ground?
No, well, definitely not. I dispute certainly the fact of calling this desert warfare, because in the end, this is going to be the type of counterinsurgency warfare that we have been witnessing in many parts of the world, in Iraq, in Afghanistan in particular. So technology is not going to be the absolute solution. The war cannot be won from the air.
And Hollande says this mission is threefold. He says it's aimed at stopping the terrorist aggression, securing the capital Bamako, but also enabling Mali to recover its territorial integrity, i.e. reuniting the country. I mean, is this something that can be done within a matter of weeks?
It can be certainly attempted. Certainly the initial entry force of the French army, a group of two task forces, company-sized task forces in Bamako, entered already on Friday and had the first mission of really protecting and stabilizing the capital city. We're now seeing this contingent grow to regimental strength, and with these forces there will be more possibility for mobile warfare in order to essentially go and chase after and force the insurgents to regroup where they can eventually be combated and eventually annihilated. The reconquest of northern Mali, however, I think really is not so much a military issue as a historical and political issue, because let's be extremely clear, in the past 10 years, the Mali government has not been able to assert its power over northern Mali. The power at the time was exercised by essentially secessionist groups, Tuareg minorities. So it will be very interesting to see if France decides, these are the two military variants and political variants, on one side deciding to support the Malian government and essentially take on the responsibility of a conventional war to reassert the central authority over the rest of the country. I think that will be quite a challenge. The other possibility will be to negotiate with all sorts of groups and try and stabilize the situation and essentially kick out those elements that clearly, those Islamic fundamentalist elements that have been imported into Mali from Libya, from Algeria, and from other places.
All right, okay. I do want to talk a bit more about the long-term political situation with you, Donague, in a moment. But Douglas Yates, first of all, just to go back to the enormous task that France is facing right now. I mean, this is a formidable foe, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. This isn't some ragtag army, is it? I mean, they really do have their work cut out. Already they've been surprised this week by losing Diablé.
Yeah, it seems as though France is involved in more than one war. And although it's engaged itself on behalf of the Malian state, there's also something more direct going on. And that is France is involved in now a global war on terror. And I think what can explain a lot of the urgency to France's response is that it's been preparing to fight forces who treat France directly as an enemy. And attacking the terrorists in a home base is a way of defending itself here at home. France right now, for viewers who aren't in France, they should know that France is under Vigipirate, that is a very high vigilance. There are troops patrolling the train stations, the air stations.
Paris, yep.
And rather than trying to defend yourself at home in France, the idea is we need to attack the decision makers who are in the bases now in central Mali. That war is rather complicated, but clearly France is able to fight that war. The other issues, creating political solution for Mali, determining the status of the Tuaregs, establishing territorial sovereignty, those issues France is not capable of dealing with. And I think François Hollande was clear. He wants those issues to be dealt with by the regional organization, ECOWAS.
Donegla do. I mean, everyone has been quick to deny that this is France's Afghanistan. But when you hear about long-term political situations, the difficulty in governing certain parts of the population, there are a lot of parallels, aren't there? And people are talking about the Tuaregs.
Yes, of course. But one important point, I think, is that those jihadists, those people, they were not Al-Qaeda at the time, but they've been there over 10 years. They've been there 11 years, and no one tried to catch them for 11 years. So they've had plenty of time to build positions, to even have family, marry, get into the population, spread into the population, and that is going to be very complicated. And so the Tuareg thing is one part of the problem that just came in a situation that was already very bad in the north, with no state, no government being able to build the country in the north.
But to what extent did the Tuaregs help the jihadists, the people you just referred to gain such an enormous part of territory back in March of last year?
As I just said, the jihadists were there first, but then the Tuaregs kind of opened the door to them gaining ground. What happened is that for the first 10 years, there had been occasional clashes between Al-Qaeda and some bits and pieces of former rebellions, Tuareg rebellions that were still around. And then everything changed when hundreds of Tuareg fighters came back from Libya. They were in the Libyan army or in Gaddafi militias, and they had to go back home with weapons and with everything because the revolution was gaining ground in Libya. And those guys, most of them had been away for years, even dozens of years. So they were very different from the traditional Tuareg culture. They had been, some of them even grew up in Libya. Some of them were Libyan citizens. And so when it came to those whole groups of people being together with weapons and trying to seek some kind of a revenge against the rest of Mali, which had obviously been treating them not so well in terms of developing the north of the country and so on. So they thought they were going to be able to gain ground and to eventually have independence. And what happened is, I believe they got manipulated and overthrown by those Islamic fighters who were in the background waiting. So yes, definitely the so-called civilian Tuareg rebellion, I mean, as in terms of not being radicals, they kind of opened the door for the rest of the story to happen.
And one might say that it looks as though their struggle, the Tuareg struggle for an independent homeland, is now more imperiled than it ever has been before.
Well, yes. I mean, they have made themselves obviously more unpopular with the bulk of people in Mali, and that's a terrible thing because it's going to create actually more problems to reconstruct the political culture of the North, which, you know, it has traditionally been a lot more tolerant. And I think it's also ought to be said, I mean, you know, that the Tuareg themselves are factionalized between the MNLR, which is the nationalist group that, you know, pushed the idea of having a devolution and a separate state in the north, and the avowedly jihadist Ansar-Din, headed by Ag Ghali. And Ag Ghali is seen as the sort of pivotal leader particularly of this latest move southwards. And he had been engaged in negotiations indirect negotiations with the Malian regime to see what can be done about sort of moving back into some arrangement with Mali. And initially it was thought that this push southwards was about sort of like playing a negotiating card to up the antes. It's obviously got completely out of control, and it's turned into a full-fledged military campaign.
Dr. Vautravert, if I could bring you back in now. I mean, given all the tensions and the difficulties we've just been talking about, do you think it's realistic to expect that Mali can one day be reunited?
I think it's unfortunately getting more and more unlikely. As I said, to take essentially the power. I am not absolutely sure how legitimate this central authority and central power after the coup d'etat is, but let's just assume this, to essentially try to bolster these forces as the US military has tried to do for the past 2 years and try to reconquer or to try to conquer the north of the country, I think is going to be a very difficult undertaking. You know, there are precedents in Africa, and I'd like to perhaps call in the precedent or the case study of Sudan with Darfur. And unfortunately, we have minorities, breakaway minorities, this would be the north of the country. It just so happens that there is one common point between Sudan and en l'occurrence here Mali, and this is the natural resources, the resource curse, the uranium, the minerals that are extremely interesting in particular to Western companies, French multinational corporations in particular, are in the north. And here is the essential problem of what to do with two-state solution. If ever the north and the south cannot be reunited, then the question is going to be who is going to be on top, who is going to sit, who is going to be the proprietor of all of this uranium. Is it going to be the Tuareg? Is it going to be Al-Qaeda? I think that you understand what is at stake here.
All right, Danego, you're shaking your head at that.
Yes, I wouldn't be. I don't know really if reuniting the Mali is impossible. What I am very concerned about is the fact that the north of Mali is not a Tuareg territory. Tuaregs are part of it, but there's several other tribes, people, Songhais, Fulanis, people like that. So there is no such thing as a Tuareg homeland, or it would be really in the big desert north, and that goes up to Algerian territory, which would be another issue. What I'm very much concerned about is the fact that what is going to be very difficult is to reunite the communities. We know that people in Gao and Timbuktu, fair-skinned people like Tuareg and Arabs, are very much afraid that the others could take revenge on what may happen if the country is back on its feet. And that's one point. And the second point is that also the Tuaregs, the ones that came from Libya, whatever group they're members of, it looks like they're the ones who made horrific human rights violations.
Hold that thought. We're going to have to take a short break. We will have the second part of tonight's debate right after this. Stay with us.